My sister-in-law is pregnant. My mother-in-law started preparing all sorts of seafood dishes for her after reading pseudoscientific advice from online quacks. She served both raw and cooked seafood, and my sister-in-law ate with great relish. By the 6th month of pregnancy, her belly had grown alarmingly large. I suggested taking her for a prenatal checkup, but my mother-in-law said her daughter was carrying twins and told me to mind my own business. Later, when they were out, I secretly took her to the hospital. The doctor said she had a parasitic infection, and the babies were already stillborn. Her husband went berserk and stabbed me 18 times. My mother-in-law spat on my corpse. Worthless trash. You killed my 2 grandsons. Death was too good for you. My sister-in-law gloated. Now that you're dead, your house and car shall be mine as compensation. When I opened my eyes again, I'd miraculously been reborn. On the very day my sister-in-law's pregnancy was confirmed, to celebrate my sister-in-law's pregnancy, my mother-in-law prepared a table full of her favorite seafood dishes. Gina, why are you just standing there? Sit down already, Mom. Sis-in-law's just upset about my pregnancy. I get it. My sister-in-law's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. Staring at the lavish feast before me, it suddenly hit me. I'd been reborn. Transported back to the very day my sister-in-law's pregnancy was confirmed. Gina, as the elder sister-in-law, you mustn't hold a grudge against Violet. If anyone's to blame, it's your own barren womb. 7 years of marriage without so much as a whimper. I sat down quietly as my mother-in-law shot me a glare before turning to serve my sister-in-law. This is steelhead trout mother bought at dawn from the market, specially prepared as sashimi for you. My sister-in-law was enjoying her meal with relish while her husband affectionately patted her belly. Violet's womb is truly blessed. Conceiving within a year of marriage, this is definitely going to be a boy. Nonsense, I'm aiming for the jackpot. A pair of twins, 1 boy and 1 girl, to complete the perfect family. Her eyes twinkled mischievously as she set down her chopsticks and wrapped her arm around her mother-in-law. Judging by my sister-in-law's condition, my brother can forget about having a son in this lifetime. When I have a son, he'll take my surname and be considered the family's rightful heir. The younger sister-in-law shot her husband Zhao Jun a meaningful glance, and he immediately chimed in. Their sweet talk had the mother-in-law beaming with delight as she placed a chopstickful of greens in her bowl. My sister-in-law frowned and pushed the vegetables aside. My mother-in-law wasn't pleased. She pointed at me and asked, Gina, you're a nurse, tell us, shouldn't pregnant women eat more greens? Under my sister-in-law's warning gaze, I smiled and spoke up with the whole family watching. A balanced diet is important, but Violet's emotional well-being matters most. Mom, listen up, I'm the boss of this house now. The mother-in-law pursed her lips helplessly, her eyes brimming with doting affection. The sister-in-law picked up another marinated shrimp that her mother-in-law had bought. I'll be staying at home during my pregnancy. I'll need to trouble you to take care of me, sis. My mother-in-law chimed in. She should be waiting on you hand and foot. Since she can't bear children, the least she can do is serve the woman who'll give Keith's family their rightful heir. That's exactly what happened in my past life. My mother-in-law made me attend to Violet throughout her pregnancy, and I dared not cut corners, considering her every need. I carefully planned nutritionally balanced meals for her 3 times a day, but my mother-in-law fell for some quack doctor's online advice, claiming seafood, being low-fat, high-protein, and nutritious, would make the baby smarter, whether raw or cooked. Every dish was served to my sister-in-law. When I advised my mother-in-law that pregnant women shouldn't eat raw food, she scolded me, accusing me of being stingy and only giving my sister-in-law cheap meals. My sister-in-law also claimed I was jealous of her carrying the precious grandson and deliberately causing trouble. By the 6th month, her belly looked ready to burst. I suggested taking my sister-in-law for a prenatal checkup, and my mother-in-law flew into a rage, pointing at my nose and screaming. She said my sister-in-law was carrying twins, a boy and a girl, and told me to mind my own business. Later, when they weren't home, I secretly took my sister-in-law to the hospital. The doctor said she had a parasitic infection, the babies were already stillborn, and any later could have cost the mother her life. Zhao Jun went berserk, barged into my home with a knife, and stabbed me 18 times. My mother-in-law didn't even try to stop him. Instead, she spat on my lifeless body. A barren old hen like you killed my precious grandchildren. Death was too good for you. By the time my husband rushed home after hearing of my death, it was already too late, overcome with grief. He clutched my lifeless body, sobbing until he could barely breathe. The whole family watched coldly as my husband literally choked to death before their eyes. My sister-in-law sneered triumphantly, "Since you're both dead, your house and car shall be mine as compensation. Having died horribly in my past life, I won't waste my breath giving advice this time around. Let's see how that parasite crawling out of her womb on delivery day gets to play the legitimate heir of old Keith's family." After gorging on seafood all evening, my sister-in-law started having stomach pains at night. My panicked mother-in-law came banging on my door. "Violet's in pain, you're a nurse, go check on her now." I patiently explained to her, "Mom, I'm a nurse, not a doctor, I can't diagnose illnesses." Zhao Jun, still somewhat rational, gently pushed his mother aside and urged me, "Sis, could you give the hospital a heads up first? I'll take Violet there right away." "What hospital? That's just the baby kicking, the little one's just active after eating, at just 3 months, that's too early for fetal movement." To my surprise, he actually had some common sense. I replied calmly, "If it's not the baby kicking, could it be food poisoning?" My mother-in-law waved her hand dismissively, flatly denying the possibility. "Impossible, absolutely impossible. I only buy the freshest ingredients. How could it possibly be food poisoning?" With the matriarch having spoken, Zhao Jun didn't dare voice any further objections. In the living room, my sister-in-law dashed to the bathroom once again. Noticing Zhao Jun's worried expression, I reassured him, "Pregnancy is never easy. Mom still worked in the fields when she was carrying Keith and Violet." My mother-in-law shot me a glance and nodded. Seeing her expression soften, I pressed my advantage. "And who knows what side effects the hospital medication might have on the child? If anything happens to Keith's family's precious heir, how could I ever face our ancestors?" The mother-in-law blocked the doorway, adamantly refusing hospital treatment. Zhao Jun slapped his thigh decisively, stealing his resolve. The younger sister had been running to the bathroom all night and was completely drained by dawn. She didn't dare say she wanted to go to the hospital, just glared at me in silence. Seeing her turn pale, her mother-in-law brought her another bowl of seafood congee. This time just looking at it made her nauseous. Waving her hands, she protested to her mother-in-law, "Why does it smell so fishy? Is this seafood spoiled?" Zhao Jun took the bowl and wolfed it down in 2 bites. "It's perfectly fine, tastes delicious to me. Mom's cooking is absolutely unbeatable. Violet, you've been restless all night. If you don't eat something, the baby won't get proper nourishment." Under the family's persistent urging, the young sister-in-law reluctantly forced herself to drink it. To everyone's surprise, she actually threw up this time. She'd had a great appetite throughout her pregnancy, so this sudden vomiting gave the whole family a scare. I refused to eat any more seafood. I knew this wouldn't do. How's she supposed to deliver my parasite-ridden nephew if she stops eating? "Violet, seafood is the most nutritious, low-fat, high-protein. Expectant mothers should eat more of it, and this fish. Your mother woke up before dawn to buy it at the market. Who's she working so hard for if not for you and the baby in your womb? Don't let your petty moods make you disregard all she's done for this family." I theatrically wiped away non-existent tears, seeing how well I understood her. My mother-in-law finally softened her expression toward me. My sister-in-law gritted her teeth and glared at me with venom in her eyes. I placed the bowl in her hands, and she forced down half of it while fighting back nausea. But my little stunt had earned me her lasting resentment. Whether anyone was home or not, she started finding all sorts of ways to make my life miserable. One minute she's asking me to fetch water, the next she's demanding I cut fruit for her. Of course I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. The water was boiling hot, all under the pretense of, "Drinking more hot water is good for you." Didn't even bother peeling the fruit. When my sister-in-law complained, I told her all the nutrients are in the skin. My mother-in-law kept nodding in agreement, her anger instantly melting away. The next day, she started pulling new stunts. I'd just returned from night shift that day to find my sister-in-law lounging on the couch scrolling through her phone. "Sis, my feet have been painfully swollen lately. Give me a massage." Summoning my last ounce of energy, I pressed on her pressure points, only for her to howl in pain. My mother-in-law charged out of the kitchen brandishing a spatula. "Damn it, how did Keith's family end up with such a useless woman like you? I doubt you've ever properly cared for patients at that hospital." My sister-in-law treats me like her personal doctor when she's unwell, then turns around and calls me a mere caretaker. No matter how many times I explain, she's got her own twisted logic. She wouldn't listen, and I didn't want to argue with her. My sister-in-law finally learned her lesson after giving me trouble, and stopped bossing me around, but then she set her sights on the property under my name. My sister-in-law's morning sickness lasted a whole month, probably her body's last-ditch effort to protect itself. Her mother-in-law wouldn't let this go on, trying every trick in the book to cook for her. A month later, when her appetite returned with a vengeance, the old lady cooked with even greater enthusiasm. Sashimi and marinated seafood became daily staples on the dining table, but seafood alone could no longer satisfy her sister-in-law's growing appetite. 2. My mother-in-law was hinting around for money, clearly strapped for cash. With Keith away and my sister-in-law on bed rest during pregnancy, shouldn't you, as the elder sister-in-law, show some consideration? Though they caused my tragic death in my past life, I'll still fulfill my obligations. After a video call with my husband that evening, we agreed to give his mother a monthly allowance of 1,000 yuan, yet my mother-in-law remained worried all day. Since seafood is notoriously expensive in inland cities, I immediately understood her concern and taught her how to shop online. Just as expected, the seafood prices online were surprisingly affordable. She placed an order in the morning and received the delivery by the next evening, delighting her so much that she started buying in bulk. She even kept some livestock alive, ready to slaughter whenever needed. One night when I got an emergency call from the hospital, I overheard my sister-in-law and Zhao Jun plotting something the moment I opened the door. Will your plan actually work? Just wait and see. To my mother, a grandson means everything. Once I give birth, not just this apartment, even the cars and properties under my brother's name will all be ours. You actually expect my son to take the Kim surname? No way. Once we get what we want, we'll change it back. No one will ever know. So that was her scheme all along. Kiss your house and car goodbye, because that baby's never getting born. Without my intervention, my sister-in-law's belly at 5 months pregnant looked ready to deliver, yet her body had grown thinner than before the pregnancy. I knew parasites were multiplying inside her, draining her nutrients. My mother-in-law watched with anguish, muttering constantly, all belly and no strength. How will she push this baby out? My sister-in-law remained unfazed as she casually remarked while watching TV, carrying twins explains the big belly. Besides, all the weight goes to the babies. Most pregnant women would kill for this blessing. No idea how she could possibly know it's twins. My mother-in-law claimed all those doctor-ordered tests were money traps, so she only went to the hospital on the day her pregnancy was confirmed. The food show was featuring Korean-style yakko, making my sister-in-law's mouth water as she demanded beef for lunch. Beef is great for building strength. The mother-in-law rolled up her sleeves to stew the meat, but was stopped by her daughter-in-law. She insisted on having beef tartare instead. The mother-in-law had to compromise and followed an online recipe to prepare it. At dinner, my sister-in-law devoured the entire plate of meat by herself, so my mother-in-law had to cook more on the spot. No need to turn on the stove anyway, just toss in the seasonings and mix. Late at night, rustling noises kept coming from the living room. When I opened the door, it turned out to be my sister-in-law. There she was, slumped on the floor with her swollen belly, munching on the rainbow trout my mother-in-law kept in the fish tank. Her white nightgown was stained crimson with fish blood. Surrounded by scattered scales on the floor, the blue light cast across her face, illuminating her narrowed eyes brimming with satisfaction. In the eerie atmosphere, I nearly gasped aloud. My sister-in-law turned her head sharply at the sound, her gaze wary. I immediately closed the door and texted the tenant. This place is no longer livable. I need to move out immediately. I told the tenant to vacate as soon as possible and offered 3 months' rent as compensation. The tenant is a highly educated woman who works late nights and has no time to house hunt or move. To get her to move out, I took annual leave and spent every day house hunting with different agencies. On the 3rd day, I finally found the perfect place. Seeing how desperate I was, the tenant cleared out completely within 2 days. That same day, I contacted an agent to list both the apartment and my car for sale online. Only after handling everything did I finally call my husband, who's stationed abroad. To my surprise, he didn't blame me at all for acting on my own. Honey, I've been feeling uneasy lately. I had a dream recently where Zhao Jun killed you. A thought struck me. Could it be that my husband has also been reborn? Honey, I'll support whatever you do. I can't bear to relive that despair from my dreams. Sweetheart, darling, why aren't you saying anything? Unseen by Keith on the other end of the line, I was already weeping uncontrollably, choked with sobs. After calming down for a while, I asked him what we should do with the money from selling the house. Keith paused briefly before declaring with determination, "We'll invest it in Shanghai. This project is wrapping up soon, and I'll be getting a promotion. Then I'll apply for a position at the Shanghai headquarters. Don't worry, honey, everything's going to work out just fine." With my husband's support, I'm more determined than ever to set clear boundaries with his family. Their business is no longer mine. All I care about is my husband's well-being in this lifetime. A few days later, I finally received some good news. The house sold, and the buyer paid the full amount in cash. That money happened to cover the down payment for my Shanghai apartment. After signing the contract, I went home for the last time, only to walk into a real spectacle. From that day on, my sister-in-law demanded raw meat with every meal. When my mother-in-law couldn't stop her, she sent Zhao Jun to reason with her, but the girl bit a chunk right out of his arm. Blood gushed from Zhao Jun's arm as he hopped in agony. The sister-in-law's eyes gleamed at the meat on the ground. Defying her mother-in-law's protests, she snatched it and stuffed it into her mouth. Squinting with pleasure, she chewed deliberately before swallowing with a satisfied sigh. Zhao Jun's eyes burned crimson as he lunged forward, hand raised to strike her. Seeing this, the mother-in-law clung to Zhao Jun's leg, sobbing, "Violet's starving, don't be mad at her, it's all my fault, I shouldn't have denied her meat, don't lay a finger on her, she's carrying my precious grandson." Zhao Jun couldn't bring himself to strike her. He stormed out, slamming the door. In the end, I had to buy a freshly slaughtered chicken to shut my sister-in-law up. That evening, Zhao Jun came back and absolutely refused to share a room with his sister-in-law. Then my mother-in-law suddenly remembered me. Fearing the sister-in-law might hurt someone again, she decided to move her into my husband's and my place. They cornered me in the bedroom from both sides. If I didn't give in, who knows what Zhao Jun might do to me next. I fought fire with fire, flopping onto the ground and wailing like a banshee. "Oh sweet merciful heavens, if you don't come home soon, husband, there won't be a home left. My poor unfortunate father-in-law. Strangers are about to steal your house right from under you." My shameless antics left them utterly dumbstruck. My mother-in-law pushed Zhao Jun out the door, demanding I speak my mind clearly. "We don't own any property. Keith only claimed we bought a house because he feared you'd give it to Violet. That rent-to-own story was just an excuse to keep freeloading here." When her scheme fell apart, she completely lost it and kicked me out on the spot. Just as well, I moved into the hospital dormitory, freeing up the house for them. Life has been incredibly fulfilling since they've been gone. Video calling my husband after work every day has actually deepened our bond. Checking the calendar, my sister-in-law's due date is just around the corner. Lately, my mother-in-law has been keeping her housebound for the sake of her precious grandson, delivering meals to my sister-in-law on schedule. Every meal inevitably included her favorite raw meat and seafood. Before we knew it, the due date arrived, but my sister-in-law showed no signs of labor, wailing around the house daily. The neighbors reported my mother-in-law to the community office, and that very day, the director came by with gifts to check on us. My mother-in-law gloated, boasting that her daughter was carrying twins, a dragon and phoenix pair, and vowed to host 3 days of feasting once they were born. Before the director could speak, another wave of agonized wails erupted from the room. "Is she going into labor?" The mother-in-law immediately pushed open the door and rushed in. The young woman was curled into a ball, her clothes soaked with sweat as something writhed visibly beneath her skin. Just as the director leaned out to get a clearer look, a long fleshy worm crawled out from her eye. Before she could even scream, the director collapsed unconscious. After handing over duties to the next shift nurse, I got a call from my mother-in-law on my way back to the dorm. "Gina, come quick, Violet's going into labor, alive." After all this, my mother-in-law still hasn't noticed anything wrong. I think she's playing dumb on purpose. She'd sacrifice her own daughter's life for a grandson. I hung up the phone and rushed to the maternity ward. The young nurse at the doorway crooked her finger at me. We'd worked together for a while during my rotation in her department. "Sis, that old lady claims to be your mother-in-law. Is that true?" Seeing my unchanged expression, she continued, the pregnant woman they brought in is riddled with parasites, the baby's definitely not viable, and she's in critical condition. We can't even guarantee she'll make it out alive. She sighed. Don't be too hard on yourself. Who could have guessed you'd catch this while pregnant? 3. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why should I blame myself? We're all adults here. Everyone's responsible for their own choices. By the time I arrived, my mother-in-law was already arguing with the doctor. Gina, tell me this isn't fair. How could Violet get a critical condition notice just from giving birth? She flung the document at the doctor's face, screaming, I won't sign this. If anything happens to my precious grandson, you'll pay with your life. Her words made my blood run cold. To prevent my mother-in-law from doing anything reckless, I persuaded her to step outside so I could talk to the doctor privately. You're a medical professional too. How could this happen in your own family? I gave a helpless smile. Exactly. This wouldn't have happened if they'd listened to me. The doctor shook his head with a bitter laugh as he explained my sister-in-law's condition. The parasites in her body have spread systemically. Surgery can't guarantee complete removal. She'd been running a high fever for days, and her condition has deteriorated significantly. What about the baby? My question caught the doctor off guard. The fetus stopped developing months ago, likely around the 4th or 5th month. I nodded and was about to leave when the doctor called me back. Are you signing the critical condition notice? I threw up my hands. I'm just the sister-in-law. I can't possibly decide my husband's sister's fate. Outside, my mother-in-law was calling Zhao Jun. Mom, I'm playing cards. Don't bother me unless it's important. They told me my precious twins were gone, and now they want me to sign a critical condition notice. After my mother-in-law gave the hospital address, the call abruptly ended. Remembering how Zhao Jun had killed me in my past life, I immediately summoned a nearby nurse to alert security. Moments later, Zhao Jun arrived reeking of alcohol. The doctor reiterated my sister-in-law's medical condition once again. No sooner had he spoken than Zhao Jun pulled out a kitchen knife from his waistband and lunged at the doctor. Fortunately, I'd called security beforehand, and 2 guards subdued him effortlessly. Zhao Jun kept struggling, refusing to submit. The mother-in-law kept kowtowing eastward as if oblivious, chanting, Bodhisattva bless us. All deities protect us. My daughter must deliver this child safely. My grandson mustn't come to harm. A young nurse muttered under her breath, that womb's infested with parasites. There's no baby in there. The old woman's eyes blazed. What did you say? Say that again if you dare. The nurse curled her lip. Her own mother could have fooled me, more like a monster-in-law, gambling her daughter's life for some phantom grandson. Seeing my mother-in-law about to rush forward, I quickly thrust the critical condition notice in front of her. If you don't sign this now, you'll lose your grandson for good. She finally agreed to sign, but before the pen touched paper, the medical team had already rushed into the emergency room. My sister-in-law survived, but at the cost of her uterus. She could never conceive again. When I told my husband, he remained silent for a long time before repeatedly reminding me to stay safe. He'll be back soon, and then we're moving to Shanghai. I followed my husband's advice and ignored them, focusing on wrapping up the handover. That's right, I quit my job. I had just packed up all my belongings and stepped out of the hospital when I happened to run into the neighborhood committee director, Keith's daughter-in-law. You'd better stay away from home for now. Find somewhere else to lay low. Seeing my confusion, she sighed and began explaining what had happened at home. The whole neighborhood knew about my sister-in-law's incident, and everyone was gossiping about my mother-in-law behind her back. Too afraid to face the consequences, my mother-in-law resorted to smearing my reputation. She's been telling everyone that I'm the one who harmed her daughter, that I failed to care for my sister-in-law properly, and that I'm infertile. My sister-in-law ended up in this terrible situation because she was trying to bear a son for me and Keith. Sigh. Others might not know the truth, but I see things clearly. You must be extra careful these days. Who would have thought? Even though I stayed out of my sister-in-law's business this time, my mother-in-law still dragged me into the mess. To figure out their scheme, I turned on the living room camera and reviewed the earlier footage. The footage showed Zhao Jun slapping my mother-in-law repeatedly across the face. He kept hitting her while yelling, blaming her for feeding my sister-in-law raw seafood that gave her parasites, so he knew all along. During her sister-in-law's 3rd trimester, the mother-in-law would sneak into her room every midnight to remove the parasites crawling out of her body, terrified Zhao Jun might find out. You damn hag, Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The mother-in-law retorted defiantly. I'm doing this for your child. Zhao Jun slapped him again. If you hadn't delayed her treatment, would she have needed a hysterectomy? She can never have children now. Are you divorcing Violet? Fuck no, I'm staying married. What? Waiting for you to pop out a son for me, you old hag. The mother-in-law shrank back timidly, muttering, it's not my fault. Gina's the one who can't bear children. I just wanted a grandson. What's wrong with that? Exhausted from the fight, Zhao Jun slumped on the couch, smoking and brooding. You're damn right, Gina won't get away either. He angrily crushed his cigarette on the floor. Get Gina back here. I'll teach her a lesson she won't forget. What are you going to do? Zhao Jun smirked viciously. After all these years without pregnancy, let me test if she's truly infertile. The mother-in-law only tensed for a moment before regaining her composure. As long as the flames didn't reach her, others' misfortunes were none of her concern. So what if her son got cuckolded? There were plenty of fertile women in the world. He could just find another. Using me to appease Zhao Jun's anger was the best possible outcome for her. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me. With such a major incident at home, you couldn't even bother to come back. Violet will be discharged in a few days. Come home first so we can discuss the next steps. I scoffed. Go back? Might as well walk straight into a trap. When she saw I wouldn't comply, she immediately turned the tables on me. You filthy whore, with your husband away, you refuse to come serve your mother-in-law. Must be sleeping around. How dare you cuckold my son? You'll pay for this. I hung up immediately. Undeterred, she brought Zhao Jun to protest with banners at the hospital entrance, determined to force me out, but I'd long since left my job at that hospital. Hospital security called the police, and they were shooed away. Back then I was still lounging in the hotel, blissfully watching the live stream with AC blasting. Little did I know they'd actually track me down days later. To avoid trouble, I holed up in the hotel surviving on food deliveries. That's probably how they caught my trail. After finishing my takeout, I was about to take the trash out when I opened the door and saw my mother-in-law and Zhao Jun standing there, skipping home to get a hotel room. Who's the man you're sneaking around with, sis? He kept advancing as I retreated, until his hand grazed my cheek. I've always thought you were quite the looker. Why don't we give it a try today? For, Zhao Jun, this is a public place. One shout from me and everyone will come running. He burst into laughter as if hearing a joke. Mom's standing guard outside. Even if someone comes, she'll just say we're married. So sis-in-law, you'd better behave. Trembling all over, I swung the vase at his head, but a sudden dizziness made my legs give way. Well, looks like the drugs are kicking in. What the hell did you do? I slipped sleeping pills into your takeout to protect sis-in-law. How was the taste? Pretty good, huh? A wave of helplessness washed over me. After all my precautions, they still found me. Did I get reborn just to relive the same damn life? Honey, where the hell are you? My arms went limp as Zhao Jun cradled my boneless body like a rag doll. His foul mouth slobbered over my face as I lay helpless, eyes shut tight with silent tears streaming down. A sudden sharp shout pierced through my dazed consciousness like a lightning bolt. That familiar voice, it's Keith. Zhao Jun was yanked up as punch after merciless punch rained down on his face, leaving him collapsed on the ground with blood streaming from his nose. Honey, I'm sorry I'm back so late. A whirlwind of emotions surged through me, the relief of surviving disaster, and the overwhelming urge to see them again. I was at a loss for words and could only shake my head repeatedly. Seeing her scheme unravel, the mother-in-law slapped her thighs and shrieked, "Son, open your eyes. This damn slut was the one seducing Zhao Jun. Who'd want a barren woman who can't even bear children?" The mother-in-law's deliberate distortion of the truth completely eroded the last shred of sympathy her son had for her. Seeing her husband reach for the phone to call the police, Zhao Jun couldn't hold back anymore. "If you dare call the cops, I'll sue your mother for intentional harm. Your mother knew Violet had parasites but refused to take her to the vet. That's intentional harm if I ever saw it." Wiping blood from his lips, his eyes turned fierce. "No matter what it takes, I'll make her pay dearly for this." The mother-in-law shrank back guiltily, while her son-in-law, though convinced, still refused to give up. "Mom, did you already know something was off about Violet?" The mother-in-law avoided eye contact. I only did what's best for you. I've been retired for years. All our neighbors are holding their second grandchild by now. if you two weren't so useless, would I have to resort to this? I knew she had worms, that's why I cleaned her every day. How was I supposed to know it would nearly kill her? Mom, we've been married 9 years. First I didn't want kids, then I got stationed overseas, coming home just once a year for a week at most. How could Gina possibly get pregnant under those conditions? You're treating Violet's life as disposable for the sake of some unborn child. Before the mother-in-law could defend herself, a figure burst through the door and began pummeling her, summoning my last ounce of strength. I looked up and saw it was my sister-in-law. Having survived a life-or-death ordeal, she'd become emaciated, her once plump cheeks sunken like an old crone's. You damned old hag, this is all your fault. Trying to trade my life for your grandson, Today I'll end Keith's bloodline for good. Before I could react, she suddenly pulled out a knife and lunged at my husband. My mother-in-law kicked her away before I could even scream. Weak from malnutrition after her hospital discharge, she stumbled and cracked her head on the ground, blood pooling around her. You worthless thing, your useless womb can't bear children. Don't you dare blame me. Don't you forget who signed those papers to save your sorry ass. Watching the farce unfold, Zhao Jun burst into laughter from the sidelines. The husband closed his eyes briefly before dialing the police. Zhao Jun was arrested for attempted rape, while the sister-in-law, still recovering from previous injuries, was readmitted to the hospital with fresh wounds. Terrified of Zhao Jun's accusations, my mother-in-law lived in constant anxiety, somehow sensing our plan to move out. She shadowed our every step. Left with no choice, we unpacked our already packed luggage. That's more like it. We're family, let's live together peacefully. Now that Keith's back, I'll get to hold my grandchild soon enough. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. With everything that happened, my mother-in-law was still obsessing over having a grandson. Thankfully, she finally let her guard down. Seizing the opportunity, we flew straight to Shanghai. A month later, we moved into our new home and started fresh. My husband landed a corporate position at headquarters with another pay raise. He said I've endured enough hardship alone back home and insisted I quit working. I'm taking time off at home. My sudden death in the previous life made me realize how many regrets I'd left unresolved. There's nothing wrong with taking it easy and enjoying life this time around. That evening, I slipped into my new silk pajamas and wrapped my arms around my husband's neck. Aren't you worried I might not be able to have children? Whether we have kids or not, you'll always be my wife, for me. The journey matters most. I only have myself to blame. We ended up being at it for hours again, gazing at my husband's sleeping face. That thought resurfaced in my heart inexplicably. Perhaps it's time we had a child. I secretly began preparing for pregnancy, but before we could conceive, news came from our hometown. Zhao Jun had been released. Turned out he'd developed uremia and was granted medical parole. Fresh out of prison with nowhere to go, he returned to his mother-in-law's house. Things are really heating up now. Not only was my sister-in-law constantly bickering with my mother-in-law at home, but now Zhao Jun has shown up too. The three of them are at each other's throats every day. Never a dull moment. Rumor has it Zhao Jun doesn't have much time left. He's trying to father a child in his final days, and somehow tricked the old lady into signing a home equity loan agreement. He took the money and vanished without a trace, with the house gone. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law became homeless, living under a bridge day and night. When I asked my husband, he said his mother's monthly living allowance was always deposited into her account on time. I called the community director back, and her tone carried a sense of helplessness. For some reason, the mother-in-law hoarded her money, refused assistance, and forced her daughter-in-law into prostitution instead. You're no woman anymore anyway, might as well earn some cash while you're still young, the daughter-in-law fired back viciously. Why don't you whore yourself out, you old hag? Might even pop out another bastard. Stop waiting for others to breed. Do it yourself, you bastard. Your man swindled my house. Give me back my money. If you hadn't made me get that hysterectomy, he wouldn't have divorced me. I haven't even settled the score with you yet, and here you are cursing at me first. Naturally, they ended up brawling again. I told the director not to bother updating me about them anymore. If the day ever comes when we're needed, it'll only be to collect their corpses. After hanging up, my chest heaved violently. I felt nauseous but couldn't vomit, the discomfort bringing tears to my eyes. My husband was hopping around me, insisting on taking me to the hospital no matter what. I couldn't help but shoot him an exasperated look. You dummy, you're going to be a dad. My husband seemed in disbelief and bought multiple test kits. The test showed 2 clear lines. Of course, he held me close, tears unexpectedly welling up. This is wonderful, truly wonderful. So different from my dreams. Yes, absolutely wonderful. When our child turned 3, we took her back to our hometown for a visit. Beneath a bridge, 2 vagrants were gnawing at a dead stray cat. Their faces were obscured by matted hair, making them unrecognizable. Not that I cared to look closer. Hearing my husband and child calling in the distance, I hurried over. Under the setting sun, we held her tiny hand and walked together toward the horizon. Story 2. When the rain first started, nobody paid much attention to it. After a week, I observed that neighbors were still harmoniously helping each other. 3 months into the rain, I had witnessed the most terrifying aspects of humanity. By the 5th month, I thought I was the last survivor in the apartment, aside from myself. Then one midnight, rustling sounds came from outside the door. I remember this family had a dog, right? Yes, and they also grew vegetables. It was a girl living alone. They sounded desperately hungry. I turned my head and looked at the dog lying close beside me. Once again, I reluctantly picked up the kitchen knife. At 5 a.m., I was awakened by the pitter-patter of the rain. Huddled by the window, my dog, a German shepherd named Commander, saw I was awake and came over to nuzzle my hand. Seeing her eagerness, I rubbed my eyes and struggled to get up, then opened the door to the terrace. Go ahead. At my command, Commander dashed out. The rain wasn't heavy, but for someone suffering from chronic nervous exhaustion like me, the sound was enough to qualify as white noise. I had rented this top-floor apartment with a terrace specifically for Commander. The 30 square meters of terrace space was more than enough for her to frolic. The fridge was nearly empty. I finished the last bottle of milk in one gulp. Looking at Commander's dog food, only a little remained. Time to shop again. As I dashed into the building with 4 hefty bags, I saw my ex-boyfriend, who suffered from chronic kidney weakness, helping a girl move her luggage. Just like he had helped me 3 years ago. Couldn't he come up with something new? I lowered my hat brim, hoping to sneak past them unnoticed, but Michael still spotted me. Rose stocking up again. He knew I was a homebody, the type who could stay indoors forever as long as I had food. I uttered an ah, placed the bags by the elevator door, and pressed the button despairingly as I saw the elevator was still on the 29th floor. Michael's freight elevator was also waiting. He scurried over. Buying so much, can you manage? I shook off the rainwater from my coat onto him without even looking up. I might not be very strong, but I can still knock out a couple of your teeth. As I said this, I grabbed his chin and forced him to show his front teeth. These dentures look pretty real, just a bit too white though. I raised an eyebrow. Maybe you should get them all replaced. Michael, frightened, wriggled out of my grip and stepped back. I wondered where he got the courage to approach me. The girl was watching, so he had to feign composure. I saw you had so much stuff, just thought I'd help. Really ungrateful. I couldn't be bothered with him, effortlessly lifting the 4 heavy bags and entering the elevator. Just before the elevator doors closed, I yelled, still got 2 bags of that kidney tonic at my place. Should I bring them over later? I watched as Michael's face turned red, and he made a futile gesture as if to rush over. Please, just an act. He couldn't beat me. I leaned back in the elevator, smugly watching the doors close. Back home, Commander, who had played until she was tired, was lying on the mat at the terrace door, waiting for me to wipe her feet. Guess who I just ran into? At my words, Commander hummed and obediently stretched her paw towards me. I smiled. Right, it was that damn thing. She mused, then corrected herself. No, he's worse than a dog. The Commander's throat began to rumble with a purring sound. I knew he understood, even though he had been with Michael for over 2 years. When that man started hitting me, the Commander didn't hesitate to attack. He bit a large hole in Michael's calf. As I petted the dog, I glanced casually outside. The rain was still falling. In my life, I hate domestic abusers the most. When I was 15, after my mother was severely injured by my father, I used the evidence I had gathered over more than a year to successfully put my father in jail. But 3 years later, my mother still left me, so as I grew up, I trained relentlessly, fighting, sanda, boxing, judo, taekwondo, karate. I mastered them all. Michael became the first to face the consequences. When his slap landed on my face, I was stunned. I couldn't believe that the man who had been so attentive and caring for 2 years could hit me, before he could strike a second time. My fist had already hit his face. Michael was stunned and spat out blood. I didn't give him a chance to react. I jumped on him and unleashed a flurry of punches and kicks. The commander took the opportunity to bite his calf again. A week later, Michael, bandaged and limping, came to me. He spoke with difficulty. "Rose, you're looking at a lawsuit." I barely held back a laugh as I slapped a stack of documents across his face. "If I'm going down, you're coming with me." Seeing my calm demeanor, Michael panicked. His right arm was broken and in a sling, and he struggled to flip through the documents with his left hand. They were evidence of his company's tax evasion and bribery. His crimes were far greater than mine. It's only been 2 months. It seemed like Michael had forgotten all this and started to be all smiles with me again. Disgusting. I went to the terrace and opened the rainwater collecting barrel. It was already half full. It seems the rain had started quietly since last night. Just then, a voice called from nearby, "Rose, watering the plants." It was the grandma from across the hall. Our apartment building had 29 floors, with about a dozen units per floor, but only the units on the east side had terraces. Grandma and I had the east-facing units, our terraces only 3 or 4 meters apart. "Yes, Grandma, it's raining, so I'm watering the plants." "That's right, rainwater is best for the plants." After saying this, Grandma went back to her garden. She had turned her entire 30 square meters of terrace into a vegetable garden. Unlike me, I only had plants around the edges. To let the commander play, I installed an aluminum rain shelter on the terrace, which not only sheltered from rain but also from the sun. The rain shelter had a water tank, and the water was supposed to go straight down the drain pipe, but to water my plants, I had redirected it into a 500L barrel. After a while, Grandma popped her head out again, holding 2 large purple eggplants. "Rose, look how well these big eggplants are growing. I'll leave them at your door later. Make sure to pick them up." "All right, thanks, Grandma. Come inside. It's starting to pour." As we spoke, the rain intensified. Grandma waved her hand, hunched over with a bag of vegetables, and went back inside. Her patio was open to the sky. As Grandma believed that plants weren't so delicate and thrived best under the natural sunlight and rain, I returned home and turned on my cell phone. The hot news was still about the flooding disasters in the south, with villages swept away by the floods and people left homeless. As I scrolled down, a less noticeable news item caught my attention. Due to heavy rains, extensive agricultural fields in cities M, C, B, A, and others have been flooded, with farmers guarding their wheat fields waiting for rescue teams. A chill ran through me. The Northeast, has it started there too? This is not normal. City J, in the north, is a small city situated on high ground. Flooding is rare in the Northeast, and people here do not fear heavy rain. Everyone tends to believe that the floods won't reach us. I thought the same. Despite wearing earplugs, I did not sleep well that night. The next morning, as usual, I groggily opened the door to the patio. "Go ahead." This time, my dog Commander didn't rush out but hesitated, pacing on the spot. It was then that I fully opened my sleepy eyes and noticed that the patio had accumulated a layer of water. Looking to the left, I saw that the rainwater barrel was full and had overflowed. The drainage holes in the corner were also clogged with leaves and debris. It seemed the rain hadn't stopped all night. "It's okay, no rush," I reassured Commander and stepped out in my slippers. After clearing the 2 drains, the water, which was less than 10 centimeters high, quickly drained away. The patio could at most accumulate 10 centimeters of water. Any more than that would just flow over the railing. "Come on out," I waved to Commander, who eagerly dashed out to his little toilet. I then glanced at the neighboring patio. Grandma had already covered the vegetable garden with a plastic tarp, knowing that the rain wasn't stopping anytime soon. Without cover, the vegetables might rot. I leaned over the railing for a closer look. Fortunately, there was no water accumulated on the ground of the complex. It seemed that after 2 days of rain, the drainage system in City J was still holding up. But what if the rain doesn't stop? I went inside to find my phone and quickly searched for news from other countries. As expected, it was raining all over the world. I figured the World Meteorological Organization must be overwhelmed by now. "Commander, do you think the rain will stop today?" After doing his business, he ran back inside, not playing outside but instead snuggling with me on the couch, quite unusual. Hearing my question, Commander hummed softly and rested his head on my knee. He looked listless. They say animals have a sense of nature. My smart commander seems to think the rain won't stop today. I need to stock up on more supplies. Not just for myself but for my dog too. Although I had just been to the supermarket yesterday, I felt that what I bought wasn't enough. If the city's drainage system fails and the streets flood, we'll be without water and electricity within a week. In 15 to 30 days, there will be widespread food shortages. If the rain doesn't stop, I didn't dare to think further, and quickly logged onto an online store to order a 500-liter water storage barrel. Next, a cartridge stove, gas canisters, alcohol blocks, vacuum bags. I bought everything. Vacuum sealers, hand crank flashlights, dog food, dog treats, dog toys, compressed biscuits, instant noodles, powdered milk, and various canned goods. That's all I could think of for now, mainly because my bank account balance isn't looking too great. It was getting dark. After the 10 barrels of water I ordered were delivered, I decided to head out again. This time, I skipped the supermarket on the first floor of the apartment. Instead, I went to the largest shopping mall in J City. Since I have a vegetable garden at home, I didn't buy much food. I focused more on dog food, daily necessities, and things like sanitary pads. I pushed 2 fully loaded shopping carts to the cashier. Then, I took out 2 oversized burlap sacks I had brought. Time to check out. People around me stared as if they'd seen a ghost. I didn't care. With supplies at home, there's no need to panic. Dragging the 2 sacks, I found myself inexplicably stopping in front of a Decathlon store. I went in and then came out. Now, I had 2 extra large backpacks on me. Coming out, I regretted it. My account only had 25,000 left, and I had just spent 10,000 on 2 inflatable rafts. Crazy. To avoid drawing attention, I deliberately used the elevator from the underground parking garage of the apartment building. Unfortunately, the elevator stopped on the first floor. Hey, it was my ex-boyfriend, again. I swear he must be camping out at the apartment entrance, waiting to help new single women move in. Michael was also stunned, mainly because I looked so bizarre right now. He glanced at the contents of my sacks. He exclaimed, "You bought so many sanitary pads. What happened? A flood?" I rolled my eyes. "Want one to stick over your mouth?" Michael pursed his lips, dropped his sneaky look, and seemed to be talking to someone. "When will this rain stop?" "Huh," I replied. "Yeah, be careful not to drown when you step out." On the 12th floor, Michael got off the elevator. On the 29th floor, I too got off, struggling with the sacks, almost crushed by the 2 packs. "Commander, open up." As soon as my voice sounded, the door to 2901 clicked open. A furry head peeked out. Good boy. After putting down the things and locking the door, I collapsed on the sofa, thinking about what else I might need. I just fell asleep. On the 3rd day, it was still raining. The first thing I did when I woke up was check the weather forecast. For the next week, it would be light rain, heavy rain, light rain, heavy rain, heavy rain, heavy rain. The Meteorological Bureau had also issued a yellow warning for severe rain. Barefoot, I rushed to the balcony and peered over the railing. Commander got a fright and ran out onto the balcony, ignoring the puddles. Through the rain mist, my vision was blurry, but I could still tell that there was no dry spot left on the streets. The drainage couldn't keep up with the downpour. In the afternoon, the items I ordered online arrived. By the 4th day, the streets began to flood, and the number of people and cars started to decrease. On the 5th day, not just in J City, but a national red alert for torrential rain was issued. This meant that within a day, the water level would rise nearly a meter. On the 6th day, the streets became crowded again. People finally realized the crisis and began to venture out to stock up on supplies, undeterred by the knee-deep floodwaters, frantically loading things into the car. The rainy night was chilly, so I closed the door to the balcony. I watched as the dog quietly ate his food, seemingly unaffected by the hustle and bustle outside, as if it didn't concern us. I had stockpiled enough dog food to last half a year. Surely the rain will stop by then. On the 7th day, I checked the residents' group chat. It presented a warm and harmonious scene. Does anyone have some rice they can sell me? I can spare half a bag for free. Just come to 701 to pick it up, haha. Thank you, much appreciated. I've made braised pork and shrimp in oil. Anyone who hasn't eaten, come down for some. Much love. Thank you, everyone. No need to panic. The rain will probably stop in another 3 days. The country won't let us starve. No need to risk going out to buy supplies. God bless. Let the rain stop soon. I quietly turned off my phone. A sense of unease lingered in my heart. 3 days later, the rain had not stopped. The first floor of the apartment was completely flooded. I heard that some people from the first floor left overnight, not knowing if they could find a safe place. The rest either sought help from those on higher floors or slept in the stairwells, if the rain continued, as the water rose. The residents on the lower floors would have to keep moving up, then my 29th floor wouldn't be safe either. Now, no one responded to requests for food in the group. At that moment, the supermarket owner on the first floor spoke up. Look, we're all neighbors here, and I still have a lot of food, but given the circumstances, I can't sell it at the usual prices. If you're interested in buying, message me privately. His message set the group ablaze. It seemed there were quite a few people short on supplies. I remembered that 3 nights ago, the supermarket had closed early, and the owner said he wouldn't sell anything. It appeared he had moved all the stock to his own place on the 15th floor. He was just waiting for this moment. No one was being generous anymore, and he could now sell his goods at a high price, as much as he wanted. He could even set up an auction, with the highest bidder winning, and then he could call it neighborly help. Humph! I put down my phone, turning away. I took out the last bag of sweet rice dumplings from the fridge. I knew that if the rain didn't stop soon, we'd lose power. By then, all the frozen food would go to waste. That's why I hadn't stockpiled much frozen food to begin with, and these past few days, I'd been eating from the freezer first. Now, all that was left was this bag of dumplings, half a bag tonight, the other half tomorrow. Perfect. Just as I finished cooking the dumplings, the dog suddenly perked up his ears and trotted to the front door. Sure enough, the doorbell rang. Holding the dumplings, I peered through the peephole to see my ex-boyfriend, who was still alive, standing outside, in the middle of the night. What do you want? Through the security chain, I spoke without much patience. He leaned in close, whispering as if he were a thief. Rose, I know you've stockpiled a lot of food. Can you sell me some? I've got dog food left. Want a bowl? I casually took a bite of my dumpling. Ouch, that's hot. Michael stared at my dumpling, clearly swallowing his saliva. I knew Michael had no food at home because he never cooked. He always relied on takeout or eating out. He had the money for it. But now, there were no restaurants open. Rose, stop joking. I'm serious, Michael pleaded. Come on, we were together for 2 years. Get lost. You can go to the 15th floor and buy from the supermarket owner. Darn. Guess how much he's selling a box of instant noodles for? How much? I asked curiously, lifting my head. Michael held up 2 fingers. 200. What? That really shocked me. After slurping up the last drop of soup, I burped at Michael. Well, you've got money anyway. Then I closed the door forcefully. I knew he would buy it. Michael just wanted to get food from me with the least amount of money. His dignity and face didn't matter to him. No, he had no dignity at all. I wonder how he had the nerve to knock on my door with such a barefaced cheek. Through the peephole, I saw his face slowly lose the smile and turn sinister and terrifying. I had almost forgotten his usual playful demeanor. Michael was prone to violence. 5 days later, the power went out. It had been raining non-stop for the first 15 days. Looking at the no signal, no network icon on my phone, I suddenly felt a bit desperate. This day had really come, so fast it felt surreal. I remember the news from yesterday. They were still trying to rescue the capital and other places. It seems our small town was truly forgotten. Turning my head, I saw the commander playing with a ball on the terrace. I gathered my emotions and played with it for a while. Then, that familiar voice rang out again. Rose, do you still have enough food? Suddenly I felt like crying, and when I turned around, my eyes were involuntarily filled with tears. It was so good to hear my grandmother's voice again. There's enough, Grandma. Let me know if you need anything. I'll bring it to you. I have more vegetables than you, Grandma said proudly as she pointed around her garden, then instructed, but don't go out. It's chaotic in the building recently. I nodded vigorously. Okay, Grandma, take care of yourself. The rain will stop. Grandma turned her back, waved her hand, and went inside. I think Grandma wasn't afraid. Though she was not tall and quite thin, she was an incredibly resilient person. I never asked her why she lived alone here, why she stayed on the top floor, why her children didn't visit her. Actually, we hardly ever spoke. Grandma would just often leave a bag of vegetables at my door and ring the bell. By the time I went out to pick it up, she would have already gone back inside. Grandma was still here. The commander was still here. Suddenly, I wasn't so scared anymore. We weren't at the point of not being able to live, right, without the internet. The homeowners group finally quieted down, but the hallways were getting more chaotic. People had started knocking on doors, asking for food. Luckily, we were on the top floor, and without the elevator, no one wanted to expend the energy to climb up here. But I had forgotten one person, day 20, when I saw Michael again. He had lost a lot of weight, his eyes deeply sunken, run out of money. I still spoke to him through the security chain. His voice was weak. Damn it, the supermarket owner won't sell anymore. After the power cut, he began fobbing us off with thawed frozen food. How is that edible? It's all raw. How can we eat that? Now, he's completely stopped selling. I nodded in agreement. True, he realized the rain won't stop. So he's keeping the food to save his own life. Michael kept peering through the door gap. Rose, you still have food, right? I don't have much left either. Come on, I saw you buying several bags the other day. I spread my hands helplessly. It's been a week since the power outage. Many of the foods have gone bad. I lamented. I originally wanted to tease him by offering him more food. Even if I hated him, I couldn't just watch him starve to death right in front of me. But Michael started to panic. Rose, you must have some food left. I know you grow your own vegetables, he insisted. What was in those 2 sacks you had the other night? And one day, I saw you carrying parcels upstairs time after time. Were you buying food online? Michael's voice grew more frantic, and he even began reaching his hand through the crack in the door. Eventually, his eyes bloodshot, he pointed at my dog, the commander. At the very least, you still have your dog. With the size of the commander, he could last a week if rationed. Michael lost it. Give me the commander, Rose. I can't believe what I'm hearing. My whole body shook uncontrollably. Is this the man I've been with for 2 years? Commander growled softly beside me. My face darkened, and I looked emotionlessly at Michael. Wait. I then turned and walked towards the kitchen, thinking I was getting him food. Michael's eyes glinted with greed, and he hastily shoved his hands further through the door gap. When I returned, I thrust a fruit knife straight through Michael's palm. His scream echoed through the building. I held the knife firmly, not pulling it out, leaving him no choice but to stare at me in horror. Then, I peeked through the door gap, my eyes fixed intensely on him. Come up again, and I'll chop you up to feed the dog. My tone was ghostly. Michael was stunned. He knew I could do it. Nodding like a bobblehead, he trembled all over, seemingly forgetting the pain in his palm. Only when I slowly pulled out the knife did he start to wail. Michael left, holding commander. I stared out at the rain, my expression shifting from blank to resolute. I knew, every day ahead would be incredibly tough, not just because of the storm, but also because of the people downstairs, growing increasingly desperate. But I needed to survive. Survive with commander. I went to the innermost storage room and began to inventory all the food. Previously, I had just piled everything up, thinking the rain would stop after a few days, but now, I needed to prepare as if it would never stop. Rice, flour, and the like were sealed in vacuum bags. Vegetables that were cooked but uneaten were also cleaned, dried, and vacuum sealed. I wasn't sure how long these bags would last, but this was my only way to keep things fresh. After the water cut off, the bottled water ran out even faster, leaving only 8 barrels. It seemed that besides drinking and cooking, I couldn't use the pure water anymore. With so much rain, boiling it for washing and cleaning was entirely feasible. I spent the afternoon busy. Finally, I arranged the food according to its expiration date. Starting from the front, there was enough to last me a year, but Commander's dog food would only last 6 months. Together, we might barely make it 10 months, with the rain increasing by half a meter daily, rising 15 meters a month. In less than 6 months, the entire building would be submerged. By then, I couldn't afford to think that far ahead. To live one day was a victory. After tallying up the food, I began searching through every nook and cranny for weapons. Then, someone else came knocking, 2 men in their 40s, begging for food. As soon as they spoke, it looked like Michael had spread the word about my supplies. No, I replied coldly. The man behind grew impatient. Why waste time talking, just break in. As he spoke, both men began to ram the door. The so-called anti-theft chain was nothing more than a decoration. It was knocked off in an instant. I took 2 steps back and held the dagger horizontally across my chest, assuming a defensive stance. Well, the little girl has some training, huh? The tall man, with a look of determination, came at me wielding a wooden stick. After a brief exchange, I reached a conclusion. He was a paper tiger, with the commander restraining another one. I had an easier time fighting. Soon, the tall man's body was covered with countless cuts. He probably didn't even realize it as he continued to swing his stick aimlessly, until his companion shouted, "Ryan, you're covered in blood." The man stopped, glanced over his body, and just collapsed to the ground. The cuts weren't large, but they were deep, every stab aimed at arteries, each one potentially fatal if not quickly stanched. At that moment, more people appeared at the door, 5 in total. Both men and women. I quickly assessed the situation, wondering how I would handle it if they all attacked at once. Could I overpower them? Could I bring myself to deal lethal blows? By then, the blood-covered man had been dragged to the doorway by his companion, who was also in bad shape, having been bitten several times by the commander. The sight froze the group outside, ignoring the blood on my face. I held up the still dripping dagger with one hand and gripped the charging commander with the other, giving the newcomers a cold stare. "Can I help you?" Clearly intimidated by my appearance, the group at the door scattered. I shut the door, my legs gave out, and I knelt on the ground. The spots where the stick had hit me started to hurt. It was a relief. These people had just come to try their luck for food, not to rob violently. But I knew, it was only because they were not desperate yet. And today was just the beginning for me. After cleaning up the blood inside, I continued to work on my self-defense weapons. A baseball bat, which I had adorned with nails of various lengths, had turned into a spiked club. I tested its weight in my hands. It felt good. Commander watched me, head tilted to one side. I gripped the spiked club in one hand and rubbed his head with the other. "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Day 30. The water had already risen above the 5th floor. I didn't know how many people were left in the building, only that fewer were coming to my door, because each time they came, they left with injuries, empty-handed, barely alive. Michael hadn't shown up. I wondered if he had starved to death, and I wasn't much better off. My body was covered in large bruises, and my face had been slashed, nearly disfiguring me. Commander's hind leg was injured by a blunt hit, leaving him limping. But none of that mattered, as long as the 2 of us were still alive. Now, the air was filled with the smell of sewage and decay. Each breath I took made me want to retch. The nights without electricity were especially quiet, pitch black, unable to do anything. But tonight, there was movement in the hallway. The moment they reached the 29th floor, Commander sensed it. I quickly lit 2 candles and placed them up high. Then, another alcohol block was lit to boil water. Next, I stood guard cautiously at the door with the commander, waiting for their next move. Their footsteps were light, but there were many of them. Looking through the peephole, all I saw was darkness. Why were they moving in the dark without any lights? Then, the footsteps stopped right at my door. Again, before I could think further, a loud bang sounded. I didn't give them a second chance to smash the door. I quickly opened it myself. Before they could react, I hurled a basin of boiling water at them. Amidst their screams, I had already grabbed my spiked club. Illuminated by the candlelight, I swung mercilessly. Despite their numbers, the doorway was narrow. I stood at the entrance, knocking down anyone who approached. The commander helped me by sneaking in attacks from below. They were trespassing, weren't they? I was acting in self-defense, right? I had rehearsed this scenario countless times in my mind. In recent days, the sounds of doors being smashed, cries of pain, and calls for help echoed through the apartment from bottom to top. I couldn't save anyone. I could barely protect myself. I knew what humans could do when extremely hungry, and I was prepared for the day it would be my turn. Seeing their night vision goggles, I remembered that Michael's company developed these, of course, behind the group, I saw the ferocious face of Michael, after I stabbed his palm that day. He had been plotting this moment, telling everyone I had food, rallying people. He laid low for many days, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. Poor Michael, you underestimated the vigilance of a woman who had lived alone for years. I slammed the club into the last man's leg, my eyes bloodshot as I fixed my gaze on Michael. I just watched him, then stepped on the thigh of the man on the ground. With a fierce pull, I yanked the spiked club out, splattering his face with blood. Michael trembled on the ground, his groin damp. His men were all down. Then he shakily pulled out a dagger. Waving it aimlessly in front of his chest, muttering incoherently, I laughed. That pathetic knife was nothing compared to my club. With a backhand swing, his knife flew out of the window in a parabolic arc. Aren't you dead yet? I used the baseball bat to lift Michael's chin, looking down on him. He seemed plumper than the last time I saw him. As Michael regained his senses, he started to kneel and beg for mercy. Rose, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I have food. I'll give it all to you. I won't come up here again. I won't bother you again, Rose. Before he could finish, I swung the bat down. He screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Hearing you call me Rose makes me want to vomit. After that, I pulled the spiked club out of his leg and used my shirt to wipe the blood off my face. At that moment, the door across the hall opened. Grandma looked at me, then at the chaos all around. She only said one thing, Rose, do we have enough food? I hid the blood-stained club behind me and pulled out a long-missed smile. We do, Grandma. Good, that's good. Grandma spoke as she closed the door. On the floor, there were 8 in total, moaning, screaming, and some who had fainted. They were the gang that had been wreaking havoc in the building recently. I didn't take their lives, I just crippled their legs. Then, one by one, I rolled them down the stairs so they could never climb up to the 29th floor again. As for Michael, I took the opportunity to cut off his tongue. Would I have had all these troubles if he hadn't been such a blabbermouth? By the time I finished cleaning up the blood in the hallway, dawn was breaking. Outside, there was no sign of the rain stopping. After that night, I felt as if a seal had been lifted. I was afraid of nothing. I even wished the police would come and arrest me, as that would at least mean the rain had stopped and everything was back to normal. But now, it was like the apocalypse. Later, I went to check on the 15th floor. Just as I thought, Michael hadn't starved to death because he had broken into the supermarket owner's house with a few others. Despite having plenty of food, he still came after my life. Now, the place was occupied by refugees. When I went there, they were frantically devouring the food inside. Seeing me, they acted like dogs guarding their food, completely losing their human appearance. Michael didn't dare to climb back to the 15th floor. Those people would have devoured him, starving and losing too much blood. He died in the corridor within a few days. In the following month, the building was significantly quieter. One reason was that Michael's gang was dead, another was that there weren't many people left alive. But sometimes, the evil you can see is the most terrifying. I wonder how many demons are still lurking in this apartment building. By the 3rd month, the floodwaters had risen above the 15th floor. Strangely, it was already October, but the temperature hadn't dropped. It felt just like it did in July when the rain first started. Though the temperature hadn't changed, there wasn't much left in the vegetable garden. Even with a rain shelter, the persistent humidity was too much. The soil never dried out, and the vegetables were always rotting. Now, my worry wasn't about food. It was about what to do when the water reached the 29th floor. Would the commander and I really have to escape in a kayak? That night, when the patio door was opened, I instantly woke up from my sleep. Ever since the power went out, I had been sleeping by the main door, always alert to any noise outside, but I had ignored the patio. The rain was so loud that even the commander hadn't heard the noise outside. But how could anyone get up here to the top floor? In the faint moonlight, I saw 2 shadows enter. The commander had already dashed over, and fearing he might get hurt, I shouted loudly, "Come back!" Almost simultaneously, I pulled a kitchen knife from under the pillow and found a lighter, lighting a candle on the cabinet overhead in one smooth motion. The 2 intruders were prepared. The first one suddenly turned on a flashlight towards me. Blinded by the strong beam, I couldn't see anything. Luckily, the commander reacted quickly, pouncing from the side and knocking down the one with the flashlight. I rolled to the side, precisely finding another candle to light. Once I could see the intruders clearly, I aimed at one's shoulder and chopped down with the knife. Blood gushed out as he clutched his arm, convulsing and collapsing, while another man was still entangled with the commander on the ground, but looking at the commander. It didn't seem like he was biting. Could it be that he recognized this person? Commander, come back. He wagged his tail and came over to me. I grabbed the man on the ground and shone my flashlight on his face. Brother Wang, this man was a fellow dog walker. Usually, when I walked the commander around the neighborhood, I would bump into him walking a samoyed. Over time, we had gotten to know each other. I quickly searched him and found 2 fruit knives. Finally, I pressed a kitchen knife against his neck, my tone icy. What are you doing here? How did you get in? His eyes darted around, afraid to meet my gaze. I forced him up to the balcony and saw 2 hooks tied with thick hemp rope hanging on the railing, with the other end tied to my grandmother's balcony. After a brief pause, I pressed the knife harder against his neck. Where's Grandma? Blood started to seep from his neck, compelling him to spill everything. He even begged me not to kill him. I withdrew the knife and pointed at the rope swaying in the rain. Go on, climb back. He was desperate to return the same way. Just as he was halfway there, I suddenly spoke. Where's your dog Pippi? He lost his balance and turned back in panic. Amid his gaze filled with guilt and despair, I glanced at the commander and then pointed at the hooks on the railing. The commander understood my gesture and flipped one with his mouth. Ah! His screams faded as I watched him disappear into the water. Go join your dog. Back in the house, everyone was gone, only a pool of blood remained. I couldn't concern myself with that. I rushed to my grandmother's door, but no matter how much I knocked or called, there was no response. Grandma was dead. All my strength crumbled at that moment, and I sat at her door, sobbing. I hadn't cried once since the rain started, but now, I suddenly didn't see the point in living. The rain wouldn't stop, and the building was about to be submerged. With no relatives left in this world, what was I still holding on for? Suddenly, something warm rubbed against my arm. I looked up, and it was the commander. The 2 of us just sat there, leaning against Grandma's door until dawn. When I first adopted the commander, he was only 5 months old. He had been abandoned after his vocal cords were cut, so my commander couldn't bark. He couldn't make a sound. He was already so pitiful. I couldn't let him lose me too, just like that. We made it through another 2 months. Now the apartment building was eerily quiet, terrifyingly so. It seemed like we were the only 2 left, like we were the only 2 left in the whole world. Just when I thought there were no other survivors in this building besides me, noise came from outside the door. Is it this apartment? The one with the dog? Yeah, she also grows vegetables. A girl living alone. They sounded desperate with hunger. I turned to look at the dog pressed against me and once again picked up the kitchen knife, peering through the peephole. There were just 2 of them, talking so brazenly at my doorstep in broad daylight. Who did they think they were underestimating? I opened the door, holding a kitchen knife in one hand and leading the dog with the other. I asked, is there something you need? The 2 men outside were about to pick the lock, clearly startled by my actions. It wasn't until their expressions shifted from surprise to murderous intent that I felt reassured enough to strike. This way, I felt no guilt. These 2 knew I had a dog and they came prepared, but it was useless. In the end, it was still me and the dog that survived. The building was indeed empty. They must have drifted over from somewhere else. After all, as the water level rises, there are fewer obstacles. At that thought, I suddenly saw a glimmer of hope. I quickly ran out. Sure enough, at last. Outside the window of room 2605, I found a small wooden boat. They had come over in this. I was overjoyed. Wasn't this more useful than my kayak? On the boat, there was a telescope, a compass, and some remaining food. I guessed they had spotted my home using the telescope from some high-rise building. Calling the dog, we spent the afternoon and managed to get the boat inside before nightfall. Exhausted, I sat on the ground gasping for breath and patted the dog. Extra food tonight. 12. There are about 15 days left until the 29th floor is submerged. In the days that followed, I prepared to survive. The boat had a limited capacity. It was impossible to take all the remaining food with us, so the dog and I ate as much as we could each day to build our strength. I also used raincoats, umbrellas, and everything else I could find at home to build a makeshift shelter over the boat. It was ugly, but practical. The 15 days passed in a blink. the night before we set off. I boiled several pots of water and took a thorough bath. Then, with a snip, I cut my waist-length hair short. Looking at the stranger in the mirror felt odd, but her will to survive was as strong as mine. At 3 a.m., we set off. I tied a kayak with a rope to the back of the boat. Although it made rowing harder, I wanted to bring as much water and food as possible. I was relieved that over the past few days, I had taught the dog to row with a paddle in its mouth. It was really smart. The moment we boarded the boat, I didn't know if we would survive, but I knew staying was certain death. If the 29th floor flooded, I would look for a higher building. If all buildings were flooded, then I would look for a mountain. I rowed the boat westward, because I knew the terrain was higher there, and there were mountains along the way. If we found a higher building, the dog and I would stay there comfortably for a few days. If not, we would tie the boat to whatever we could and endure the long nights. Although the hands of my watch were still turning, I gradually lost all sense of time. I don't know how many days passed. As far as the eye could see, there were no longer any buildings. The dog and I were like a small boat in a vast sea. After so long, I still hadn't found the mountains. I clearly remembered there were mountains to the west. The kayak towed behind was already empty, and in our little boat, only a box of compressed biscuits, half a bag of dog food, and a bucket of water remained. Commander, I'm sorry. Although it was too weak from hunger, it still managed to nuzzle my face when it heard me speak. I really tried my best. At that moment, in the despairing darkness, a light appeared. It was a boat. My brain surged with blood, sweeping away the fatigue. I stood up, frantically shaking my hand-cranked flashlight, screaming towards the light until my throat was hoarse. Later I found out. From the time I left the apartment building to when I encountered the rescue team, a total of 54 days had passed. Everyone thought it was incredible. I had managed to drift on the water for nearly 2 months with a dog. When I reached the survivor base on the mountain top, tears streamed down my face. People, oh, it had been so long since I had seen so many people. Even though the rain hadn't stopped, despite the possibility that one day this place might be submerged, for now, I am alive. So is the commander. Both of us are alive. They say I'm truly fortunate. Am I fortunate? I just happen to have an abusive father, which forced me to master self-defense skills. I just happen to be alone in this world, possessing a heightened sense of vigilance compared to the average person. I just happen to be extremely insecure, prompting me to stockpile a vast amount of supplies in preparation for the worst. I just happen to have a dog, which is why I have a rooftop house where I can grow vegetables. I am well aware that it was the hardships I faced that saved me. It was the commander who saved me. It was certainly not luck. Even if one day the rain floods this place, I firmly believe I can still survive with the commander. We must survive.